That's our wonderful shortlist. I'm delighted to tell you that most of the creators are here with us tonight, and they're now going to be participating in a discussion and a Q&A facilitated by our judge, Darren Chetty. So you no longer have to listen to me and Catherine.
Thank you, Fen and Catherine. Anyone who was at last year's awards will probably be as surprised as I am that I've been asked to do this. But I'm prepared, and I think I'll be okay. I have to say, in the last few years, I've been lucky enough to judge a variety of children's book awards, and the Little Rebels Award is my favourite award, and it is because of the choice of the books in the shortlist, because of the quality of conversation and how carefully the judges consider each book, and thirdly, because of the community that seems to have come together around the awards. And it's just a shame we're not all together in the same space for this. But nevertheless, that community it seems to be a really supportive one. Okay, questions. I'm going to begin by asking a question to Josh, to Ben, and to Elle. See, I told you I was prepared. We've grouped your books together because all of them are what could be called middle grade novels, and they star young people as political activists and campaigners. Was it your hope that your fiction sort of role models activism for young people and children? Was that on your mind? And if I could ask Josh, first of all.
I think it was. I was consciously thinking about that, but maybe I don't think it was the character who's at the center of the book really who was a role model, but more her actions. And the book is about climate change, and it's really about the powerlessness that I feel and that children, I think, feel when confronted by something as vast as climate change. So it's about the very small actions we can take. And I mean, in this book, for instance, she writes a letter to the manager of the local supermarket, and the letter is in the book and in a way could be a template. And you know, I know some readers have written to their own local supermarkets using that as a kind of template. And then in other books, she does those sort of small actions, like having the vegetarian menu at school because she is worried about factory farming, or boycotting the family car because she wants to, she's worried about air pollution, so she walks to school instead. So yes, definitely those small actions that all of us can take. I was very consciously thinking about modeling those. Yeah.
And Ben, how about you? Was role modeling a concern of yours?
Not particularly. I was just sort of trying to write something people would want to read. I'm quite pessimistic, so I'm one of these people who thinks I'm going to publish a book and no one's ever going to read it. So I was just trying to write a fun book, really. But actually, since it's come out, I've had emails from people saying that it's inspired them to go out and do things like stuff like picking up litter in the local area and just sort of like taking like a sandwich to a homeless person or something. It's just so brilliant. I've never had that before. The book of mine has inspired people to just you know, do nice things like that. So I mean, it wasn't necessarily a conscious thing, but it's very good. I mean, especially because like really the inspiration for the book, it was born out of despair, really, like back in 2016 when sort of Trump was elected and a lot of bad stuff happened. You know, and my son was a baby at the time, and I was thinking, what world have I brought this baby into, you know? And I realised that really I've got no control over who America elects. That's nothing to do with me. All I can do is concentrate on my immediate sort of area. So just try and do nice things for people near me. So, you know, check in on someone who's feeling a bit low and things like that. And so that was sort of the genesis for the story, really, to try and inspire that, really, just to do little nice things that all add up to hopefully big things, if that makes sense. If I'm not waffle too much there.
No, not at all, thanks. And Elle, same question to you. Where did role models figure in your thinking as you wrote the book?
I'd never thought Addie would be a role model to anyone, so it's been incredible to see the reaction to her. And obviously the book is about witch trials, and it's about getting a memorial for witch trials, and my young readers are always horrified when they find out that there is no such thing and that it actually doesn't exist. So a lot of them have kind of taken up her mission in a way, which is really cool. And we just saw a picture of the First Minister of Scotland holding a copy of the book, and I just really hope she reads it and that we do actually get a memorial. But it's been incredible, and I think maybe in my heart of hearts I was expecting this character who's neurodivergent like me to be rejected, to be belittled, and to be sort of maligned. And actually it's been the complete opposite. So it's been really, really moving to see people respond to her and her story.
And Elle, given what you just shared there, that this idea that that you and the character are neurodivergent, did you feel a certain sort of vulnerability in writing about a subject that's close to home? Was
Oh yeah, because everyone's going to assume it's a memoir, and many people do. But the lens is very true. It's my lens. It's the way I experience the world, and it's the way so many children experience the world, and I'm lucky and fortunate enough that they share that with me, and adults too. The books really resonated with a lot of adults, but it's incredibly, but any author I think who puts their marginalization into the story, I think suddenly it is extremely exposing, and people, they really conflate you and your work in a very, very particular way, and it's very frightening. And like I said, I thought people would reject Addie, and I do get nasty messages from people saying people like me shouldn't write books, but the response is enormously positive, so it's been incredible.
Would you, if pushed, advocate for more people doing that sort of thing, to write, drawing from their own experience, or would you also sort of be cautious about it if you were advising?
I'd say absolutely write from your own experience, but also what I wanted to do with The Kind of Spark is not write something traumatic, not write something tragic, as so many books with disabled characters end up being, but just write something quite true to life, and it has ups and it has downs. And yeah, I would tell, and I do tell my young writers, I suppose, my young people, that they should write with their voice and only their voice, and they shouldn't try and pretend, to be someone else. Their natural writing voice is what readers are interested in hearing. Doesn't mean that you're writing something autobiographical. It just means that that's your lens, and I think it makes fantastically fascinating reading. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I happen to agree. Thank you, Elle. Ben, with your book, it was based on a true story. I'm just wondering, when you came across that story, if you sort of instantly thought, well, this is something that will make a children's book, or was there a lot of mulling over in the process?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. To be honest, the initial idea didn't come from me. It came from my editor, Kathy, who's is based in Oxford. So she heard about this chap who was doing this, Richard Brabbin, his name is. And she suggested, because my previous book, What's That in Dog Years, was sort of about it was more heartfelt, let's say, than my previous one. So it'd be a good sort of thing to try. And I just thought of, because for those who don't know, Richard Brabbin was a man who set up his own mobile soup kitchen and took it all around Oxford on his bike. And I just thought, first of all, how would a 13-year-old kid do that? Second of all, why would a 13-year-old kid do that? And that's how I got to the mitzvah thing, the doing as many nice things for people. That's how all that came about. The way I describe it to kids when I talk to them about creative writing is use that real life inspiration, but treat it like a little snowball. So you're pushing that snowball down a hill, and you turn it into a big snowball. So yeah, so Richard was that little snowball that that kicked it all off. If that makes sense.
Lovely. And Josh, I guess Hope is a character. I can imagine there's certain tabloids who would think Hope is that annoying millennial, or I'm not even sure what the correct term is for she's very interested in the politics, and I really warm to the book, but I'm wondering whether you have had backlash, or whether you were concerned about this idea that you're being too sort of on trend with politics, as you wrote.
I don't think of her as particularly a contemporary figure, actually, and one of the things I wanted to do in the book was link her to sort of movements in the past, and to give her the sense that she was part of a tradition in some way. I mean, the first book, she is desperate to do something about the overuse of plastic, and she doesn't know what to do. And then her friend's aunt turns out to have been at Green and Common, and she learns about, she researches that on Wikipedia, and that sort of inspires her to go and protest. So actually, Hope seems to me the sort of person who's always been around, and maybe now a child would have more access to ways to get in touch with other people, and to have her voice heard in a way that, she'd have been seen but not heard in previous eras. But and that perhaps makes her more contemporary. But I think the character of her, someone who is determined to change things and wants the world to be different, and also, most importantly, is always asking questions, is saying, why are things like this? Why can't the world be different? Why? I think that's a very universal, there have been people like that throughout history. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm now to move on because we're very clock conscious with this. Thank you, all three of you, for that. The next three people who I'm going to pose a question to are Sophie and ANJAN are both here, and David and MARTA. And that question is that these three weren't books that were sort of campaigns and movements, but they did seem to encourage the reader to contemplate and to engage with certain political issues. We're wondering whether you were surprised that your book was shortlisted for a political children's book award. Not that it was good enough to be shortlisted, but whether the category seemed to be one that was fitting what you were trying to do. And if I could ask Az, first of all, to comment on that.
Mute, sorry. Yes and no. Yes, I was surprised because when writing it, I had only focused on ensuring that it encouraged empathy and challenged stereotypes. So I hadn't really thought about the political aspects. And no, I'm not surprised because now you've mentioned it, it makes sense that it's up for a political award, as I do explain the political landscape in Syria and the reasons that Sami's family leaves. And then when they get to the UK, the story explores the political landscape and the challenges that refugees face in the UK. So thank you for highlighting that for me.
And did you see it as a political project that you were engaging? I know you write at the back of the book about, you know, researching this for a period of time.
I think I really wanted to make, my whole aim with this was to make a difference. I really wanted to challenge perceptions. And I really wanted people to just stop and think about how easily this can happen to anybody. That was just, I hadn't really thought, although in writing the story, I had to explain how something like that happens. And I chose Damascus because that wasn't as hard hit as other places in Syria. And so I was able to keep Sami sort of untouched, you know, not as touched by the war as other children might be, which was realistic to the to my friends' children in Damascus. But I honestly, I hadn't consciously thought of it as a political book. But yeah, it is, I guess.
Sophie, how about you? Sophie and ANJAN, if you want to take turns, what did you think in terms of Agent Asha and it being political or not?
Oh, I can't see ANJAN and I don't want to be rude.
Sophie, you go first. Hello.
I was surprised about the award, but like very pleasantly just to be considered. But I was really happy because I really want everyone to question the system and the systems around us, and I guess that is extremely political. And I think that is the most important message, actually, that I'm motivated for kids to look at and think about. And so even though that is like my heart and soul, question the system, question what's going on around you, question the rules, what do you think? I've always felt that I have to sort of like shy away from that because it's not necessarily what everyone else wants to talk about or think about. And so I'm so excited to be able to say quite openly, yes, I hope that the book does cause people to think a bit more cause kids to think a bit more politically about their world.
Thank you. And ANJAN, do you?
Well, as Sophie wrote it, I can just say that I think it's great that it gives kids a way into thinking about technology in a way that is political. It sort of shows them that there's another side apart from the kind of the sparkly side. There might be a bit of a sort of sinister side to what's going on behind the scenes. So yeah, I mean, it didn't surprise me that it was sort of thought about politically, because there's so much going on in the book that it's great. It's kind of inspiring for adults as well. So I thought it was great.
Thanks. And Sophie, you mentioned technology, and it's a really sort of plot. There's a lot going on. It's an adventure story. There's a pace to it. Can you say a little bit more about the question in the system and what sort of things you would hope young readers would be doing as they engage in the book?
Yeah, of course. So Asha Joshi is a secret agent for a spy agency, a kids spy agency, the children's spy agency, and the internet's gone down and everyone's like, it's chaos. Everyone's losing their mind. They don't know how to get to their own bathrooms, like as you would expect people would feel without the internet. But the sort of starting to investigate what's going on and what news is being pumped around this story, because sharks are blamed for it. They say that there are these sharks and they're terrible and they're chomping on the internet cables. And so she has to look at the news and the media, who controls the media, what's their motivation and the messages that they talk about. And she also needs to look at who has access to the internet, what's, you know, the backbone of the internet, the infrastructure, who owns it, who has control over that. So she's sort of trying to look under the lid, I suppose, of the everyday things that she comes into contact with. And I'm trying to encourage kids to question them too. Not to say that tech is bad or good, because it's just a tool for however humans are using it. But as ANJAN was saying, to sort of look past the sparkle and think a bit more deeply about fake news, misinformation, who's got your data, why have they got it, what are they doing with it, those sorts of questions.
Thank you. And David and Marta, same question to you. Was political in your mind as you created the book?
I think I was obviously delighted to be shortlisted for this great prize. But the great thing is that there is a political prize for children's books in this country. And in many ways, it's not surprising. When I set off, I never expected to be a children's author. I thought I was an adult author. But when I became a children's author, I found myself in a world where people genuinely believed that books could change the world and that children were actually important agents in our culture and our society. Children who are often dismissed as being unimportant, can be overlooked. But the honor given to children is really important in our world. It's political in the sense that it kind of looks at education, which is something I'm really interested in. Is our one-size-fits-all approach to education, which is dominated by government policy, is that the right way to bring up our children? How should we educate our children? It looks at the uses of technology. What are the responsibilities of someone who creates something? Are they allowed to just abuse and manipulate the things that they create? George, who's the character in the story, who is a kind of an outcome of AI, of artificial life, he is seen as something that can be manipulated by his makers. But the great thing is the children around him, as a kind of set of communal action, recognize something in George. They say, yes, he might be artificial, but he is a boy like us, he is a child like us. And I think it explores the importance of children as agents in our culture. And that's why I think it's a political book, yeah.
And it sounds, in all of the answers I've heard so far, there's this sort of tone of hopefulness that we often hear about talking about children's literature. I'm wondering how, when you write, you're engaging with the sort of ideas of offering hope, and also perhaps dealing with difficult issues of reality that might not be easy to put a sort of positive spin on. Is that something that, as children's authors, there's a particular need to sort of show more light than dark, as it were, or to show hope rather than, you know, anything that's too gritty and depressing?
I think in some ways it's inevitable again that I saw a kind of famous adult author being interviewed recently on video, and he said, any writer worth their salt believes that civilization has reached its nadir. And I think children's writers don't believe that. We believe that children can resurrect the world, can recreate the world. Ted Hughes said, every new child is nature's chance to correct culture's error. And I believe that. We are writing for the future. We are writing in the hope that these children will create a better world.
Well, that's a lovely quote. I hadn't heard that one. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great statement by Ted Hughes. Yeah.
And a lot of nods there. I have to say, David, that my year 6 class that I used to teach would be so impressed with me that I'm even talking to you right now.
So, say hello to them from me.
Thank you for that. Sophie, same question about this idea of sort of optimism. And as you say, you deal with the possibility that a lot of technology, that there's misinformation. Are you concerned that you could put too much on children? How do you balance that?
I always have in mind the sort of the is it okay? Is the welfare of the kid okay? But I don't think I particularly believe in sugarcoating. It's just that I am optimistic. I do believe that kids have the power, or our generation. I think everyone has the power to change. And I think it's particularly important for kids to feel that. So it's not to sugarcoat or protect. It's just because I really believe it. That I would hope that the book offers that opportunity to think, what can I do about this?
Yeah, thank you. As writing refugee story at this point in time, with what we're seeing on the news, how do you balance those things and not sort of make light of what is a sort of a human-made catastrophe that's going on globally?
I wholeheartedly agree with David and Sophie. I think that children have literally got the power to change things. And my hope when writing this story was that the parents that may have been supportive of that Nigel Farage poster, the children that come to school because they've heard their parents or grandparents or family members shouting xenophobic phrases. My hope is that children that read this book will connect with Sammy and go home and have a conversation, and perhaps start a conversation that can maybe change things. And what's been amazing is that although this is a children's book, it's been passed on to grandparents. I've had a 94-year-old read it, and somebody tweeted a few weeks ago to say that their mother, so she must be sort of 70s, she's a Daily Mail reader. Sorry to anybody if you're a Daily Mail reader, I'm sure you're not, but anyway, they changed their mind. She actually changed her mind about refugees, and that's what I wanted. And I think that with children, they can handle so much more than we expect them to. And I've had 9-year-olds read the book, and they absolutely understand what's happening. They connect with Sammy, they see his life through his eyes, and they have conversations that I personally, as I wrote it, didn't imagine children that age to be able to have. So I think that children can absolutely handle more than we think. And I don't think that, books that present children running off in the woods, having, a great time with their parents not overseeing them are great. But actually we want all children to be seen. And there are children that are living a reality that is dark, that is difficult, that is challenging. And I really want them to be seen too. I want those children to have, peers reading their books that will say, I can actually understand what you're going through. And I think it's important. I think it's important to have that balance. But yes, hope is important. And Sammy is very hopeful in the sense that every time something goes wrong, he still thinks things will get better. It'll be okay once I get to England. It'll be okay once I get back to Syria. And that is children. I mean, children are hopeful, aren't they? They're optimistic in some form or another.
Thank you, Az. Thank you. We're going to ask a question of the next 3 books. Thank you, everyone, for that conversation. Next, we have Lauren, Connie, and I think Ricky is here. James, co-author, is not. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Connie. And Rosie. And the question is that your books use a lot of humour to challenge social norms. What response did you hope to provoke in your young and perhaps adult readers through this strategy? And if I could ask Lauren, first of all.
Well, I always write, I think, in a way, it's a conversation with myself. I'm usually trying to figure out something for myself, and it's a way of understanding these things in my head and unraveling it, and hoping then that it will communicate something useful, comforting to somebody else. And I think with this book, The Goody, which is really written about children who are labeled, and it's and it's meant to be funny. I hope it is funny, but I'm making a very serious point, I think, because I wrote it really about my own frustrations with childhood, where you were told very emphatically what you were, whether you were, you know, mean or helpful or kind or happy, or all of these labels that get so easily thrown out to children as a simple way of, sometimes it's a way of manipulating them to get them to do things, and sometimes it's it's to hopefully give them confidence, but it also can box you in. So when you're described as arty or sporty or helpful, they might seem like great things, but they also can make you feel like, well, that's what you're meant to be. And I was thinking about it for a very long time, because I realized it had become the bones of me, like it does for so many of us, that we start describing ourselves in those terms. And it restricts us. It stops us doing some of the things that actually we might be really good at. And then we also are label spreaders ourselves, and the way we sum people up very quickly in these ways. And I think it's not really a useful shorthand. And I feel for children it's becoming a bigger thing because of all the social media, that you sum yourself up very quickly, and you get summed up very quickly, and you get judged very quickly. So I guess my hope with this book was to talk to the child, and I always hope that I am speaking on the child's side. So you know, like some of my favorite authors, like someone like John Birmingham, always I thought was very, very good at that. So that you can be funny, and you, in this I have a sort of little narrator asides in red, and it's as if someone is sitting next to you and saying, do you agree with that? Do you think that's fair? So I hope that it allows the child to feel, thank you. Yeah, like there's somebody saying it's okay to question these things. You don't have to stick with that. And then I'm also as much talking to the adult who might be reading it with the child, and sort of it's, which I don't mean in a judgy way, because I am just like anybody else, and I often use these shorthands, but I think they really are often very difficult for us all to live with. So that was my hope, was to sort of make us all think, really.
Yeah, and I mean, I was a primary school teacher, and reading the book, I could see how children would enjoy it, not just because of your visual style, which obviously is well known, but that the story itself was engaging. But I also thought I could imagine teachers really getting a lot out of this, because it seemed to be ideas that I've only encountered in theory, the sort of labeling theory and internalization that goes on in schools all the time. And yet I couldn't think of another book that did it, because I think, as you were saying, a lot of these stereotypes are positive ones, at least superficially, so people don't push back on them. And it's when someone goes, actually, I don't want to be the good one, that teachers get very confused, I think, because they think they're giving them a gift there. You said this was something personal to you. Was that from your own childhood, or as a parent, or just noticing things?
Well, particularly as a child, and my sisters and I, we still talk about it and argue about who it was worst for, you know, whether you're called the goody or the meanie or whatever. But we have noticed how it does sort of form a lot of them, what you're prepared to do and what you think. You know, I always say, oh, I'm really terrible at parties, you know, and so I go into a party expecting to find it really difficult to just go up and chat to people, for example. But that it's a sort of internalized thing. And I also, I remember hearing, I started writing this book because I had a very good friend of mine, and he kept referring to his daughter and saying, well, you are the goody, so you should do that. And I wondered what trouble they may have in the future when this child rebels. But I also started to wonder, what is goodness? You know, why is it good to do everything you're told? And sometimes is it not good to do the wrong thing. You know, there are all these things that we, you know, you're meant to do what is right, but sometimes it's right to be wrong, you know. So I really wanted to start sort of challenging that a little bit in a picture book. And I should just say I'm so touched to be included in this, because so often if you write a picture book, people just go, oh, that's a nice book, and they don't really go into what the subtext and what you're really saying. Whereas
I think what you've brought clear to anyone who hasn't read the book yet is that this book is about little rebels. It's spot on for this sort of award. Connie, humour. How did you try to use it in your book? Try to use, that was the terrible turn of phrase. How did you use it in your book, and to what end?
Tried but not succeeded. No. Yeah, so I always think, well, I've always thought that there is a real sort of snobbery, I feel, in children's book world against humour. But yet, to me, and especially since I've had kids, you know, humour is so important, and we all want kids with, you know, a good sense of humour that will really help them navigate their way in the adult world. And anything political can often sort of be boring to a child. I remember as a kid, my parents would watch the news every night, and I thought, I'm never going to be like them. I will never watch the news. How boring, you know, and I was so adamant that I would never be interested in the news. And I remember as well, as a child, not knowing really what taxes were. I just knew that they're this awful thing that, you know, people didn't want to pay, and no one teaches you that stuff at school. No one taught me sort of, I don't know, just basic things, left and right, and, you know, the NHS and taxes and so on and so forth. And when I had my own kids, I thought, well, I want them to know, because, you know, I always say that kids are shaping in the primary years, and it's so true. You look at any adult now, and we know this, you know, you reach your late 30s or 40s and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm a total product of those early years. That thing I do, that's from my dad, my teacher that said that, that's why I'm weird about that, and how I am with, I don't know, money or whatever. All of these things, they really bed in those primary years. And David hit it on the head when he was saying that people don't give enough sort of credence and importance to the fact that these are the people that will run the world tomorrow. And I always say, you know, you're shaping and forming in your primary years. By your secondary years, already the blueprint is done. By your 20s, you're so fixed that you need therapy to undo it all in your 30s. And so it's a really short window. And people, you know, there's a snobbery as well towards, you know, even all my years on Blue Peter or whatever, people just think, oh, children's telly or whatever. But kids are more important than us. We're cynical, we're jaded, we're beyond help. They can fix everything. It's sort of exactly what David was saying, but not if they don't know what's what. And the earlier children are subjected to stuff, even if it doesn't seep in first time, the more likely it will go in there quicker. And there's such a tendency in society to dumb everything down. And I think of humour as a gateway. You know, anything that gets kids into reading is good. I was a real reluctant reader until I found my gateway book. And, you know, so whether it's humour, whether it's pictures that are funny, whether, you know, your kids are into Pokemon and they read a Pokemon index card catalogue or whatever, reading needs to be something that isn't like a foreign language. It needs to be something you're so fluent in, it's not a chore. And to me, humour is really important. And there's so many brilliant kids' books out there. You know, ever since I left Blue Peter, I was asked, would you write a book? Would you write a book? And there's so many that never get discovered, never to see the light of day. I thought, no, I don't want to just, you know, write a book for the sake of writing a book. And I thought, you know, no. The only way that I would ever write a book is if I felt it did something different or something new. And then I had kids of my own, and, you know, you read to them every night. And I remember reading them the Ladybird book of Sleeping Beauty, and there's this, I turn the page and there's this awful picture of this woman essentially in a glass coffin, and this prince sort of staring and gawping at her. And it's just like, and this is so wrong on so many levels, and there's so many tropes and sort of, you know, and I know, we all know fairy tales, a lot of them are really old-fashioned. You know, Rumpelstiltskin dates back thousands of years, and it's time that we sort of reverse it all and put the right things. And I know we're all everyone here is on page with that. And so the idea to do the fairy tales was I wanted to sort of, you know, let's get rid of the damsels in distress and the knights in shining armor, because you can be a damsel in shining armor and a knight in distress. It's okay for boys to cry. You know, there's so many things, and they're so innate in our society. Things where, you know, we probably all here think, oh, we're not prejudiced. I'm not like that. But it's so integral in our culture and in subtle ways that people don't even realize. And, you know, part of it, I think, is consumerism, you know, in the post-war period. And I won't go on, I'm going off on a tangent now, but, you know, we have so much choice now. And we have, you know, we didn't used to have multimillionaires, and now we have billionaires and trillionaires and, you know, pastime wealth, all this stuff. It's all contributing to snobbery and judgment, and on very subtle levels, whether you use Heinz ketchup or Lidl ketchup or whatever, you go on a play date, you know, everything is all judgment. And we need our kids to just have those right values so early on that actually it's in their consciousness and their sort of psyche, and it's innate in them. And so the younger we get them, the better. And I think humor is a really good way to do it. And I think it's really important for them to understand, you know, I took my kids on the Remain march. You know, we've all got our views on Brexit or Remain or whatever, and they didn't know what this was. And then obviously through the day we explained it to them, and, you know, and then they got it or whatever. And lots of kids, you know, knew who Trump was, and they knew who Boris Johnson is, because they're these comedic, caricatured characters. And I thought, well, you know, maybe this is a good gateway, like I was saying, to start them young. And, you know, obviously you don't want to, I don't want to do a really worthy book, but these are important, big subjects. So to me, it sort of seemed a good way. The book is supposed to be, and James will agree, he's actually here, but he's refusing to speak because he says he's really shy. And he's really going to go mad at me now. But James, please join me if you will. Anyway, are you there? Is he going to? He's here. If you can see all the people.
Yeah, I'm not joining you, but carry on.
No, please. I might be saying the wrong things. It's a 50-50. Oh, look, he's gone.
I think you've given us lots to mull over there.
Yeah, I've spoken for far too long. Sorry, I get too animated. But anyway, yeah, humour was important.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Rosie, it is en route to be nude. Obviously, nudity is something that gets a lot of people nervous. The teachers and thinking about it in school. Humour seems to be part of it. How did you approach it?
So it wasn't really a conscious strategy, I have to say. So it's my first book, and the book kind of came out of my enjoying drawing naked people, and the people were quite funny. And I was just kind of experimenting and doing research, and I ended up painting like a little group of people on a nudist march with a placard saying it isn't rude to be nude. And it kind of became a silly, funny book. But actually, I think it was a really good strategy, because humour makes things really approachable and it breaks the ice. And I think the funniest jokes are often about the most serious subjects, and it gets people to open the book as well. I think, you know, it's difficult to talk to kids about things like bodies or puberty or what have you. But if you can get them to laugh, then that quite easily then can become a more important conversation. And also, you know, kids have this sort of toilet humour, you know, bums and poo and all that kind of thing. And I think it's really interesting that they start finding those things funny when they actually realise that they're a taboo. And I don't really know what's going on there, but I was very happy to hijack that in the book. So.
Thank you. That's a good way to end that round of questions. So I've got a quick fire round. I'm just checking my timekeeping isn't quite spot on. So if I could ask people to be as quick as possible with this, I'll call out names. Can you tell us the title of a book you read as a child or as a young person which somehow changed or provoked your thinking? So I guess we're trying to help build the sort of, you know, recognize as Josh did, that these rebellious books have been around, and these rebellious people have been around for generations. Josh, do you want to kick us off? Was there a book that comes to mind?
Well, I think I'd choose The Silver Sword by Ian Serrelier. Not so much, it's not a rebellious book, but it's a book about war, refugees, and what it feels like to have your entire life disrupted. And yes, that definitely changed my thinking as a kid. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to make a list of this because this is just going to be an extraordinary reading list. Ben, what about you?
There was a book called Chocolate Covered Ants that came out when I was a kid, but I think the author was called Stephen Maines, I think, which I loved that because it was about family stuff and it had a lot of sort of typical boy humour in it, but it was about bigger things as well. So that was quite a big one for me when I was a kid.
Thank you. And Elle?
I was 9 when I picked up Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman, and I was maybe a bit too young to read it, but the kids in the playground said there was a naughty scene in it, so I had to read it. And what I got was this great speculative fiction novel. And when I did civil rights in school, I was horrified because I was like, oh, it was real. Everything she wrote was real. She's just a genius. So yeah, Noughts and Crosses.
Wow, it's also impressing upon me that you are quite young as an author, Elle.
Sorry.
No, all the more power to you. Az, how about you?
Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. We read it in secondary school as a class read, and I was blown away by the story of that family's struggle to keep their dignity in the face of sheer racism and social injustice. And I'd never watched or read anything so upsetting, and I connected with it right away, and I loved the voice. It blew me away. I remember reading it aloud in a deep South American accent. I was so gripped by the story that I didn't care that my classmates all looked at me weird for doing that, for reading in an American accent. But yeah, that changed the way that I thought, for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's the same book that Angie Thomas said when I asked her the same question. That's really
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh wow.
Sophie.
I read 1984 at school, and yeah, that had a huge impact on me, thinking like, well, this could be real, and just sort of opened my mind to think about media differently and everything. Sorry, that wasn't very articulate.
No, that's a good choice. ANJAN?
Okay, I've prepared for this. This.
Oh, yeah.
Almost a bogeyman, because I've got 3 older sisters, and my mum bought this book for our house, and I remember my sisters like reading it and howling with laughter at stuff, and I was just like, what? I don't understand this. So I was just kind of I just thought it was amazing just to sort of go through it as a sort of older person, and I still don't understand all of it, but I still love it. It's amazing. It's just so rich, full of vocabulary, and it just doesn't underestimate the audience at all.
Yeah, I remember that one from my childhood, and not always getting what was going on.
Yeah.
David?
For me, it was when I read Hemingway for the first time as a teenager, and it was something about the language. It was the fact that people's ordinary language could be turned into literature, and his kind of American diction and syntax spoke directly to my Geordie. I felt a real companionship, and it was to do with language and the kind of the importance of ordinary language in literature.
So-called colloquial language, but yeah, everyday language. Thank you. MARTA?
Hi. Well, for me, it was this book that we all read in class when I was 13 years old. It is Catalan author. It's Manuel de Pedrolo, and the book is from 1974, so it's quite old. But it was a Catalan book that was one of the first books that was published in Catalan after Franco and everything. I checked, and it has just been translated 3 years ago into English. It's called Typescript of the Second Origin. It's about this 14-year-old girl and 9-year-old boy who are actually left alone in the world. Like, they get into a fight, they fall in a fountain, and then when they get out of the fountain, nobody's there. It's sci-fi, it's amazing. They actually need to reconstruct the whole world. So it was just very exciting for us to read that, because we would just put ourselves in that position and think like, well, what would you do if you had to actually rebuild everything up again? That was, yeah, an amazing book. And actually, like, just because of that question, it made me think that I want to read that again, because I just very remember.
Can I just check I got the title right in English? Is it Typescript of the Second Origin?
Yes.
Great.
That's it. And I can type the name here, Manuel de Pedrolo.
And can I ask, Marta, because I realised I forgot to ask you on our previous round, was it important that it was written in Catalan as well?
What, for this book?
Yeah, was that an important thing for you as a reader?
Well, I mean, not really, because I was in a Catalan school, so it was just like all the books that we had, yeah, were in Catalan, but yeah, we just learned both languages at the same time. So yeah, it's just something that my mom pointed out this morning when I was telling her about these awards. And yeah, she said that it was one of the first books that she read in Catalan. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lauren.
Oh, I'm live. My book would be The 18th Emergency by Betsy Byers. And I think I read that when I might have been around 10 or 11. And I think the main character, Benji, is that age. And he's quite a child that's always wanting to stay out of trouble and keep a very low profile. But he's a sort of doodler, and he always writes little comments next to things, little funny captions, and he makes the mistake of writing Marv Hammerman, which is the scariest boy in the school, next to a picture of prehistoric man, and from that moment everything, you know, really kicks off in the story. And I think what it did for me was make me feel very understood as a child, because that thing where he goes home and he wants to talk to his mum, but she's busy on the phone and she's not really seeing the urgency for him. She's working and he's coming in with a problem that she thinks is trivial. And then when she does focus on him, what she says to him is, well, why don't you just go and talk to him? I'm sure he'd understand. And it's such a ridiculous thing that parents say to children, as if you can just sort out your problem like that. And I suppose it made me just feel very understood by the book, understood by the author, understood by the character. And it made me realize a book is a world that you can be in, where you can feel, you know, that somebody really gets it.
Yeah.
And the one other thing I'd say about it is it taught me that life is both comedy and tragedy all at the same time, and it keeps flipping. And I think it made me as a writer think that's how I want to write, because that's the truth.
Comedy and tragedy at the same time. Yes, yes. That was very much my teaching style as well. I remember that book as a kid, and I remember how much I enjoyed all the labelling, which comes right at the start, isn't it? Connie, does a book come to mind?
It has to be for me To Kill a Mockingbird, really, because I grew up in quite a sort of white middle-class suburban neighborhood, and I remember I was always trying to fit in. My parents scrimped and scrumped to put me into private school, and I was in a sister place, and I was always just sort of trying to fit in everywhere and sort of be like everyone else. And it was the first book that I read that really had anything to do with race and messages that sort of made me think about me and sort of, yeah, how I fit in, and, you know, and the general status quo. And it really was quite an eye-opener for me.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to see if James is willing to speak on this one.
Go, James. He will, because I'm making him. Come on, James, unmute now. Oh, look, he said no in the chat. They're not gone. You must.
Okay, well, I'll see if James has a rethink about just the title, even in the chat, and I'll ask Rosie in the meantime.
A book that really stayed with me, I think I read it when I was about 15, was Vera Britton's Testament of Youth. It's obviously a true story, a memoir about the First World War, and a young woman who loses everyone that well, not everyone that she loves, but, you know, her husband and her brother, and it just made me a pacifist, and I've never really forgotten it.
Thank you. That is a new title for me, so that'll be one of the first that I seek out. Has James come up with one? No, oh God, I'm doing that whole thing of putting someone under pressure now. Okay, we shall move on. Can I just say thank you to all the writers and illustrators for taking part in that. I think I'm going to hand back to Fen now. I really enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too painful for you either.
Thank you so much, everyone. Darren, you've had some incredible feedback on your incredible, skillful hosting talent. So I'm telling you, look at the comment section afterwards, well worth your while. And thank you, everyone, for effectively giving us a new reading list of radical books. That's a joy. And thank you, all of you, for contributing. Not only what you've said tonight, you've given us so many quotable moments, but you've all contributed books towards a small but hopefully growing history and canon of radical children's UK literature. So thank you all. We are fast approaching the moment where we're going to announce the winner of the Little Rebel. Every time I try to say it, doesn't come out, does it? We're going to announce the winner of the Little Rebels Award for Radical Children's Fiction 2021. But before that, I'm delighted to say that we have last year's winner with us, one of them, Jane Porter. For those of you who don't know, last year, the winner of the award was The Boy Who Loved Everyone, written by Jane Porter and illustrated by Maisie Paradise Shearing. And we asked Jane if she would share a few words with us about what winning the award meant to her last year. And I think she's here. Are you here, Jane? Would you unmute for me? She was definitely here earlier. Oh, is she no longer there?
I am here. I am.
Hi.
It just
Hello, Jane.
work out how to unmute, but I am here. So I have. I hope everybody doesn't mind. I've just written it down. I'm going to read it out, but it's quite brief. I was thrilled when our book was shortlisted last year, and when we won, I think it's fair to say that me and Maisie were both amazed and thrilled. There's no warm glow like it. But what has it meant to us since then? Obviously, increased awareness of our book has been fantastic, and thank you from me and Maisie for that. But it's so much more. I have to admit that The Boy Who Loved Everyone is accidentally rebellious, and it's wonderful to think that a story about simple, innocent, open-hearted love can have that effect. I've always thought I was too timid to be a rebel, but winning this award has made me feel empowered. And the projects I'm working on now have a streak of rebellion, woven consciously and proudly into them. Congratulations to all the wonderful shortlistees tonight and to whoever is about to win. And I'm just going to end by repeating what I said last year. There's no award I'd rather win and no one I'd rather win it with than Maisie. So thank you, Little Rebels.
Oh, thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. And now, because we thought we'd tease you just a little bit longer, because why not, we are going to ask a couple of our judges to speak about the winning title without actually revealing the title. So Emily Drabble is going to start us off on the big tease. Go, Emily.
I love to tease. What I loved about the winning title was how it hurtled me straight into the shoes of someone that I really wanted to meet in the most engaging way. And I know this book has the potential to make real political change.
Thank you. Now, the second judge who was going to comment, Patrice, her technology's fallen apart tonight, which it did last year. So I'm really sorry, but she did send me something to say in her place. Patrice has said about the winning title, "I'm pretty proud to be woke. I consider it a compliment." Quite right. This book made me pause and unpick some of my own assumptions, as it will with everyone who encounters it. And now, if I can actually manage to name the award, I'm going to ask Darren Chetty to come in again and announce the winner of the Little Rebels Award for Radical Children's Fiction 2021. Over to you, Darren.
Oh, big pressure. Okay. The winner of the Little Rebels Award for Radical Fiction 2021 is DASSU for Boy Everywhere. Congratulations to Az.
If I could ask everyone, this is your second opportunity. On the count of three, can I ask you to unmute, roar, or waffle, or do what you need to do? But let's all congratulate Az on the count of 1, 2, 3.
Az, well done. Hey.
Congratulations.
Well done, Az.
Believe it.
Everyone can mute again, sorry. That was lovely, thank you so much. Az, congratulations. You don't need to mute, very clearly. I'd love it if you could say a few words, but if that feels too pressurized, you also don't need to.
I honestly can't believe it, and I'm going to cry because I can't believe it. The other books are so great. Thank you so much. I don't even know what to say because I hadn't prepared. I'm overdressed today because I thought Elle was going to wear a really sparkly dress, by the way, because she tweeted it. I honestly had no idea, but if there's one award I wanted to win, it would be this one, because I am a true rebel at heart. I want to challenge the norm, the status quo. I want to write books that make us think and question the state of society and our place in it. And God, I'm so proud to be a rebel author. Yay!
Thank you, Az, and huge congratulations from all of us.